And I will say right from the beginning here, it has nothing to do with minerals. It's not a mineral supplement.
Right.
Matter of fact, when we do the purification step for the analysis, we use an ion resin to remove all the minerals. So you can run it through an ion resin column and just get the hydrophobic fulvic. And prior to that, you run it through a mineral ion demineralization column and remove the minerals. And then you do your trials and tests on plants and animals.
Right. So
So
that's definitely a very important information as we move through this presentation. And as Dr. Faust said, Wujinzan is our pure fulvic isolate product, which in Chinese means black gold medicine. And somehow these thousands of years ago, doing the same sort of scientific method that Dr. Faust just described, observed that there were healing properties when they applied this rich black soil to open wounds, for instance, or made concoctions and people were drinking it for the diarrhea or the ulcerative colitis. And then they figured out that there was the yellow part when they start to do the extractions or the decoctions. They knew then that it was the yellow fraction of this rich black soil that had the therapeutic properties. And in English, then, the fulvic fraction of the fossilized soil in the process of becoming coal is the Wujinsan. And the word fulvic itself comes from the Latin word fulvus, which means tawny or yellow. So fulvic acid, by definition, is clear yellow or clear brassy in color, and it has a pH that's less than 7, which is acidic. So any product that is not yellow, or clear brass in color, and not acidic in pH is not fulvic acid. And as Dr. Faust was explaining, with the advent of the chemical or the instrumentation that we could now separate colors out in this soil, we then started to understand their function. The fulvic fraction of this black fossilized plant material is either light yellow or yellow brown in color, as we described. It's much smaller in molecular weight, 2,000 versus 300,000 in the much larger humic substances. It's much lower in carbon. It's much higher in oxygen and actually soluble across all pH levels. And as Dr. Faust just said, it's not a single organic substance, but it's very complex organic structures that have hundreds of active components, very high in hydrogen and oxygen, both of which are necessary to make water, which is fundamentally how the human body, how the human cell contains the fire of metabolism. And most people know this term inflammation. It's basically the fire of metabolism. And we have to have hydrogen and oxygen to contain the fire. Anything that's high in carbon, which includes the humic substances, which are black, gray black, red, reddish brown, are higher in carbon, which makes them a much dirtier fuel. Carbon burns black. I mean, we know this. Humic substances are also higher in free radicals than fulvic acids. This is a schematic representation of fulvic isolates, and you have to imagine that this structure is multiplied like as if you were looking in a mirror and put this in front of a mirror and you see multiple replications of this. This is a huge polymeric structure that is made of the basic building blocks that we need in our human body to work: oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur. All of these elements must be present in the soil for all of organic life to be sustained, which includes the microorganisms in the soil, the plants that grow in the soil, the animals that eat the plants. Humic substances are much more complex structures. They're heavier, they have more carbon, they have less oxygen, less hydrogen, and they're really too large to be used by a human cell. And as Dr. Faust said, the biological benefit is separate from the minerals. But the confusion sets in because we have all sorts of products that are out on the market that are calling themselves various different names, including fulvic mineral products or humic fulvic products or humates or fulvates. And what actually are these things? So I'm just going to run through a list of them and then ask Dr. Faust to comment again on what these things actually are. This is an alkaline fulvic mineral product. It's got a pH of somewhere between 10.5 and 11.3. And just for reference, lye soap has a pH of 13. So this product, which is brown and red, requires dilution in water. It's very caustic. Lye will burn the esophagus and actually can burn holes in it. And minerals can be very caustic too. And I would only caution anyone who's using this type of product that they have to be very careful with it. But it's sold as a mineral concentrate with 70 trace minerals, trace elements, and electrolytes. Here's a humic and fulvic product that's a pH of 9.2, 72 macro, micro, and trace minerals with amino acids and phytonutrients in amounts uniquely balanced for optimal health. Here is a product that's called Fulvate, a pH of 8.5 to 10.5, which is cloudy and yellow and has lots of sediments. And the sediment, these pictures are taken in time lapse. So on the right, you see that the sediment has only increased over time. And the pH decreases over time as well, which is why the amount of sediment increases. And it's kind of like if you've ever been to the grocery store and you see bottles of juice on the shelf and you see that there's water that's separated at the top of the juice bottle. This means that the juice has lost its freshness. The minerals have actually lost their charge and the pulp is separating from the water. So this sedimentation that is accumulating at the bottom of the glass is the minerals that are only held in what's called colloidal suspension and not biologically active in the product. This is a fulvic mineral product. It's brown. You can see it's a brown powder that's sort of reddish brown in solution. It's a pH of 8.65. This is something else that's being called fulvic acid. It's a dark brown or red product. The pH wasn't identified. This is another product called Shilajit, which is sold for its fulvic acid benefits, pH of 7.63, with 85 ionic minerals to help increase energy. This is Shilajit powder, pH of 6.97, brown to dark brown in color. And finally, we have a fulvic mineral liquid concentrate, which is a pH of less than 2.3. Again, very caustic. So on the high range or the low range of the pH spectrum, we have very caustic solutions that will burn the esophagus. And for reference, battery acid, lemon juice, and vinegar all have a pH of less than 2.3. And we know that we shouldn't be drinking lye and we shouldn't be drinking battery acid. So Dr. Faust, help us understand what these products are that are identified as fulvic acid or fulvic mineral products or humic fulvic products. What is this all about?
Well, this is nothing new. This goes back 25 years with certain mineral springs in Utah that were traditionally seen to be beneficial. Okay, so they really didn't know what they were looking at, and so with more primitive chemistry, you could test something and, well, it's got all these minerals. It's making us feel better. It's healing, so it must be the minerals. Well, it isn't. It's not the minerals. That's just completely a misconception from an earlier time, lacking information, lacking the science. There's many things that contain fulvic acid. It's a basic of nature. Soils, all soils that are productive, most natural waters, even the air. With modern equipment and technology, we can detect fulvic acid in the air. Also, that's a Fourier transform spectrophotometry. We can also determine now by test methods, we can separate the fulvic from the matrix and determine what it is, how much. Not only that, there are 5 fulvic fractions, not just fulvic fraction. Fulvic acid is not a compound. It's not a specific compound. It's a fraction. It's the acid-soluble fraction of humic substances or humus. So within that fraction, there are 5 different fulvic fractions within the category fulvic acid fraction. Okay, so within those fractions, let's just say in general, humic acids with an S. It's got an S on it. It's humic acids. Fulvic is one of the humic acids. Now, humic acids themselves has been shown with the latest technology over 800 different organic compounds. Some of those compounds are beneficial, and some of them are not. And we can actually rate humic substances based on the biological index. And that's the percentage of positive functional groups versus negative functional groups. Functional groups are the precursors of substances, organic substances containing carbon that are essential for cellular function, not minerals. Right. Minerals come from the food, they can come from water. It's not a source of minerals at all. If you want a source of minerals, that's easy to put together. There's hundreds of them for livestock and for humans. Okay. The fulvic acid, components of fulvic acid are the precursors of vitamins, amino acids, things like Q10 and all kinds of, there's so many, amino sugars. And it's complex cellular chemistry and more. There are functional groups, polyphenols and tannins, that are responsible for switching on resistance to diseases in insects. And that was the big breakthrough in science, and that's called molecular biology, molecular genetics. We didn't know that until recently. What's going on here? So the difference between the Earth and the Moon is humic substances, and only fulvic acid can be absorbed by the cell because it's a low enough molecular weight that it can pass the cell membrane or the cell wall.
So basically what you're saying, these products that are identified as fulvic acid are formulated as humic mineral salts, added trace minerals, amino acids, amino sugars, and they're chemically manipulated to create these salts. But when chemically manipulated, they're taken out of their natural state. And so as salts, they don't have the true biological activity, the valuable biological activity of the fraction that isn't that is removed in the resin complex that you use to identify the active substances. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We're talking about very primitive thinking, and really it's the blind leading the blind in most of these products. When in reality, fulvic acid, for instance, is very specific. And we now know about antioxidants. We know what antioxidants are. We know what polyphenols are. We know that things that have a color like blueberries, tomato skin, have antioxidant properties. Well, okay, so we're getting a little closer because this is the kind of function that fulvic acid has. Now remember, if it's black, it's not humic acid. It's not even humic acid if it's black. It's something called humin, Humin. It's insoluble fraction. And that's also where all the heavy metals are complexed or stored. In fact, we use humic acids to clean up heavy metal sites because it complexes. That means it grabs and holds on to. The fulvic does not. We separate the fulvic in a natural way, and we leave the heavy metals behind. and the black stuff, which is not humic or fulvic.
Right. Right. So that leads to the fact that when these humic substances are manipulated, understanding that the fulvic fraction is part of the humic substances, but when there's chemical manipulation that happens, this has environmental consequences. Tank load chemicals of sodium hydroxide, which is lye, or tank load chemicals of hydrochloric acid or hydrogen peroxide are used in this process to chemically manipulate the humic substances in the creation of these products, and that has environmental consequences, correct?
Oh yeah, and that's definitely a problem, and also it's a problem for the people that have to work with this stuff. And also when you start using strong compounds like sodium hydroxide, which is lye, or hydrochloric acid, you're depolymerizing some of the beneficial compounds, which are organic. You're breaking bonds. You're causing combinations and chemical reactions, and that destroys the actual beneficial compounds, which are like tannins and polyphenols, quinones, and things like that.
Right.
I mean, if this wasn't true, then you couldn't run fulvic acid through an ion exchange resin and pull out every tiny bit of mineral, but still have dramatic beneficial effects as far as biological activity
Right.
and cellular response. So easy to prove that it's not minerals.
Right.
And it's been promoted as a mineral source because this goes back to propaganda. I'm not going to mention any names, but there's strong push as a simple message. The soil doesn't have any minerals.
Right.
You need minerals to be healthy. This
Right.
product has 74 minerals.
Right.
Well, you don't need 74 minerals. If you're taking something with 74 minerals, a lot of those minerals, which really mean elements, are toxic heavy metals.
Right.
And that just, it's complete propaganda, I would say. Either that or it's just out of ignorance. I'm not sure which.
So as you've told me many times, the definition of soil basically is minerals. Soil is minerals. What's missing in the soil is the life that electrifies the soil and allows these inorganic minerals as well as the nutrient elements, the amino acids or the amino sugars or the sugars that have been created by the microorganisms to get into the plant. And this thinking about that humic acids or humic ionic minerals or anything that's a pH that's alkaline, I tell my patients it's like giving you a rock and telling you that there's fulvic acid in it, but you look at me and go, where's the gold? Where's the fulvic acid? And it's only available if you have the chemicals inside of you to do the assayer's work to remove the mineral salts from the gold. So we're really back to our definition of fulvic, which means tawny or yellow, and clear yellow or clear brass, and a pH that's less than 7. And this is something that's always amazed me, in learning in detail about fulvic substances and how they are produced and sold. There's extensive discussion in the literature about the multiple processes that are available to extract fulvic substances from the fossilized plant material. But Dr. Faust has long understood about the natural extraction processes. So if you could go through with us a little bit about the natural extraction process and just reiterate what you said, that in the chemical manipulation, the organic structures that are important are actually destroyed.
Yeah, sure they are. Because you're creating a chemical reaction with some of these alkaline extractions, which causes a combination where you let's say, tie up some of the functional groups with minerals, which are elements like calcium, phosphorus, potassium. But yeah, this goes, I want to go a little bit farther on the extraction side. My work with the Chinese and my translation of their book, 7 Years of Research with fulvic acid in China by the highest level, the Chinese Academy of Sciences, uh, listed the ancient use of fulvic acid, which they call, like I said, Wujinsan or golden medicine. It's still widely used in China, and the research is clear and ongoing. The they mention the extraction method that was used since ancient times. So it's clearly defined. Uh, Maybe trial and error over hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. So the Chinese were producing a medicine that was widely used. And it also turns out that the Indians, Ayurveda or Ayurvedic medicine, had another form, which they call shilajit. Now, I have a bottle of it right here. It's black, it has a terrible smell. It's a crude form. It's a crude form. Okay. Whereas Wujinsan is golden color, because it's extracted by a natural method, which is slow. What is also yellow? There's a lot of things in nature that have a yellow color, like
Right.
beer, for instance. Well, it's made from fermentation.
Right.
And the fact that humic substances are created by the microbial activity, mainly fungal activity on organic matter. And those compounds are produced by enzymes and by the function of microbes, that their job, their ability is to take raw organic matter and turn it into humic substances. And the method that I use is a fermentation method, because microbes are available to break down the sugars. If you don't use fermentation, it's like you squeeze some juice out of grapes and just let it sit. What's going to happen? It's going to get moldy. It's going to go off. It's going to be bad. So that's what happens with humic substances or fulvic acid that are extracted incorrectly. They are not stable. They will go off. They will be contaminated with mold. So it's just like making wine. Once you do the fermentation, you have a stable product. And so this is produced by a microbial fermentation, and there's no chemical reagents used. They're not necessary. And in
Right.
fact, the water itself is a positive function. People say, well, can't you concentrate it into a powder? Yeah, no, because there's also a story behind the water. I mean, we are 85% water. So don't we need water? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, 99.9% of the molecules in our body is water.
Yeah. So
It's an extremely important part of the process.
let's not rule out the water. And in fact,
Right.
what kind of water are these other products on the market using? You don't know. Is it municipal water from a municipal plant that's got hormones and a whole range of chemicals and pesticides? You don't know. You do not know. Is it well water from somewhere that has agricultural wastes and nitrates and agricultural chemicals in it? Probably. If it's municipal water system, it's got everything in it: birth control compounds, forever chemicals, PCBs, you name it. Okay, well, the water we use is absolutely pure, and it comes off the winter rains. Here in Oregon, we're near the Oregon coast. It comes down from the Gulf of Alaska, from the melting glaciers. I don't know whether you've ever been people have seen these glaciers up in the Misty Fjords area around Ketchikan, Alaska. I have. They call it Misty Fjords because the air is saturated with moisture from evaporation and collapse of these glaciers, and then you get a low pressure area, and it delivers it to us here in Oregon, and we collect that water and we filter it and we do different processes to that water. It was absolutely the purest water on earth. There's companies here in Oregon that bottle this rainwater and sell it as a premium drinking water. So you got to consider when you buy a humic substance or so-called fulvic acid or colloidal mineral or whatever you want to call it, it's got water in it. Where did that water come from?
Right. And most companies do say that they're using purified water or filtered water, but they don't necessarily describe the process in detail like you just described.
Really, fulvic, we evolved with this. Everybody was drinking water out of creeks and streams. It was tea colored. They were eating food grown in high, rich humic acid soils. This all derives from the soil in nature. It's produced in the soil by microbes, fungi, breaking down organic matter. All life on Earth evolved with this. This is the key substance that life evolved with. It's a part of us. It's a part of nature. It's a part of cells. You can't separate it. Once you do, well, things start going downhill because this contains substances that activate pathways that prevent disease. And also, potentiate the cells, the energy, the chi, the mana. And we use the term mana Life Labs. What does mana mean? Okay, well, it comes from Hawaiian. It's a life force. It's an energy. It's like chi in Chinese. We're a biomechanical machine. And what drives us, like most machines that are biomechanical or electrical, is electrical energy. It's an undefinable, difficult to define force that powers us, and then it leaves the body and leaves the container or our body behind. But it continues because you cannot create or destroy energy.
Right.
And so this is the electrolyte. This is what keeps you going. So people take it and they say, I feel better. I haven't felt this good for years.
Right.
Well, because
so this is a
chi,
picture. Sorry, this
mana.
is sorry. So this is a picture of pure fulvic isolate. This is what fulvic acid looks like. It's a pH of 4, which remains constant over years. It's clear, it's yellow, it's brassy. There's no sediment. So after we've gone through all this, this is pure fulvic acid. And we've gone through this already, but basically it's been generated that it went wrong because it was a feeling and a theory that the minerals were missing from the soil, when in actuality it was the life that was missing from the soil. It was the fulvic substances and not the minerals that were missing from the soil.